Welcome, everybody, to the Davidson Town Candidate Forum. I'm Bill Russell, President of Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce. This program is Facebook Live. It also will be recorded and stored on our YouTube channel. We want to thank the candidates for participating, but right now we want a big welcome from our Mayor of Davidson, Mayor Rusty Knox.
Bill, thank you, and thanks to the Lake Norman Chamber for hosting this unfortunate virtual forum that we're having. This is the new norm for all of us. It's an honor to be here. It doesn't seem like that long ago that I was participating in my very first one of these things 4 years ago, and a lot's happened in 4 years. I look at the accomplishments that our board has made for our town, and you realize when you look at things like getting rid of the continuum debt that we had, securing 251 South Street for our new town center, hiring an equity and inclusion director, increasing our footprint in affordable housing, working with North Carolina DEQ for asbestos abatement for folks on the west side in their yards, expanding our greenways, improving our parks, securing the land for Beatty Park. These are boxes that you check off. And it's great that we, and when I say we, it's not just myself and the electeds, it's the staff and it's the citizens of Davidson who work together to make these things come to fruition. But for me, they're not accomplishments, they're boxes that you check off, and those boxes are never ending. We are carrying on the work that those that came before us started. And hopefully that work will continue after we're gone to those that replace us down the road. So this is a job where you're a steward of your town. And I will tell you, it's been an honor to do this for the last 4 years. I feel fortunate that I'm running unopposed, so I can focus more on doing what I do here at Town Hall every day. But I want to thank all of the candidates that jumped in to do this. It's a commitment. It's a time commitment, but it's also a commitment to your community. And I mean that holistically, because you are a steward of your town. You are a caregiver of your town. And that's the thing that you have to embrace in doing this job, because that's where the satisfaction comes in, is when you can walk down the street and someone says, "Thanks for fixing that." It doesn't matter what that is. It doesn't matter how big or how small. It just matters that somebody thanked you for doing it. And you did it because it's the right thing to do. So with that, I'm going to stop well short of what I hear was a longer speech given in another forum. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Bill, and I think you're going to introduce our moderator, if I'm correct. And you're muted.
Let me get off mute. Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, it's my pleasure now to introduce former North Carolina Senator from District 41, former Cornelius Mayor, and the current Public Policy Chair of the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, Jeff Tarte.
All right, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mayor, for being here tonight and kicking us off. I appreciate all the candidates being with us this evening and being able to share their thoughts and opinions on a number of issues. What I'd like to do first is just, again, thank the Chamber and Bill, and thank the Davidson staff and Sam Sisson and others who've actually helped put together the forum and make sure the logistics are here for tonight. For those that are watching live, welcome, and also be aware that the forum is being taped and will be available afterwards online. So what I want to do first of all is just the candidates have been made aware of kind of the ground rules, if you will, for this evening. And I want to walk through just as a reminder, because it's been a little while since we've discussed them with the candidates, to refresh their memory, but more importantly, so everybody following along understands how this evening will unfold. First of all, the questions have been gathered by the audience. They'll be gathered by Zoom and on Facebook. Those will come into me, have been coming into me even for the past several days. We've been getting things sent. All the questions, obviously, makes it easier being virtually, will all come through me, kind of like a Robert's Rules of Order directed through the chair's responses, kind of directed back as such. Each candidate will be afforded the opportunity to answer every single question. Based on the format, we're going to go alphabetically, and Mr. Boyd will get the first question when we get to that in a moment. And then the second question will go to Ms. Campbell, et cetera, and we'll rotate through. So everybody has a chance to go first, and everybody has a chance to collect your thoughts on the questions as it comes around to your turn. What we will then do is everybody's going to get an opportunity to provide a 1-minute introduction of yourself. And we will also, closing statements will be 1 minute long for this evening. Just as a reminder, and it'll be pretty easy, but since we're virtually, because Bill controls the magic switches, but this is a forum, not a debate. I want everybody to be able to put their best foot forward. There's not rebuttals to comments of other candidates. And also, you will not be allowed to direct a question to an individual candidate. Questions that have been submitted and or will be asked will be questions that can be answered by every single candidate. If there was no questions that we'll be asking that were initially directed to 1 or 2 candidates only. Bill Russell, who you'll be able to see on your screen, will be keeping time. We'd ask that you keep your responses to each question to 1 minute. He will show a sign, which he can flash now, that when you have 15 seconds left, you'll be able to see that on your screen. And then when your time has expired, and hopefully you haven't, you'll see the red stop sign, and we'll move on to the next respondent and candidate. With that, I was trying to think if there's anything else. We don't have the mask issues, which is kind of nice for this evening. So with that, we're going to go in alphabetical order, and we're going to start with opening introduction statements by each of the candidates. So Mr. Boyd, I would say the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Tarte. I appreciate that. I'm Jeff Boyd. I'm 46. I've been in Davidson about 6 years, moved here to be near family, and have come to love being in this town. I've invested into some real estate here, some rental properties. I live downtown in a townhouse. I love walking to downtown, riding around downtown, and therefore I care a lot about pedestrian safety like others of us all do. I feel like this election, being a local election, should focus on people with practical ideas for solutions to town. To allude to the mayor's comments, I consider myself a box checker. If I see a problem, I want to get it fixed. I love checking that box, and definitely believe in that as the core function of this role, and I'd be happy to serve in that to this town.
All right, thank you. Ms. Campbell.
Good evening. My name is Jane Campbell, and I'm a Davidson alum. And I thought I'd mix it up on the introduction because I recalled in 2016, I sat down with Bill Russell to talk about my background as I had come back to the community. And I mixed it up with him. And I wanted to translate my military experience into business speak that he might appreciate. And so my last job in my 26-year Navy career was the Director of Public Affairs for U.S. Fleet Forces Command in Norfolk, Virginia. And that translated into saying that I was the Director of Communications for a $14 billion a year organization with 165,000 employees. And that's how our conversation started. But what is more important to everybody listening tonight is the fact that I decided to continue a life and career of public service. And that's when I decided to run for town board in 2017. So I'm here tonight because I'm asking folks to reelect me here in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, and thank you to everyone involved with planning and hosting this forum. I'm Matt Dellinger. I'm a Davidson College alum who returned several years ago with my wife to raise a family here in Davidson. We live in River Run. I'm a lawyer. I have an office in downtown Davidson. I'm also the chair of our town's planning board and our board of adjustment, which I've served on since 2017 and chaired since 2018. During that time, I've been heavily involved in several committees, the Mobility Plan Committee, the Growth Management Committee, a lot of work on our ordinance, and I've become very familiar with our planning ordinance and the various development procedures in town. That past 5 years has been incredibly gratifying. It's also taught me how our local government works and sometimes doesn't work as well as it could. And it would be my privilege and honor to get to serve as your commissioner, to continue my service to the community, using my training and experience and my demonstrated capacity to lead in a respectful and disciplined approach to representative local government. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. Mr. Fay.
Well, first off, thank you so much to the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. It's very important to be able to get together like this so we can share ideas and get to know the candidates a little bit better. My name is Ryan Fay, and I've been in Davidson for 7 years. I live over in the Kimberly Hudson Place neighborhood. This is not the first time that I have run. I ran in 2017, and while I wasn't successful in that campaign, I learned a lot. I met a ton of interesting people, and I ran on an idea called community dinners. And although I didn't win, I was able to see that program put into place. I served on the community dinner committee and helped the town put that on, and I'm very proud of that. Professionally, I work as the director of business operations for the Scott Clark Auto Group. I manage our 3 dealerships and over 500 employees. I think this is important because I am an established business leader. I manage a multi-million-dollar budget across 3 different stores, and I'm not afraid to make decisions, to do my research, to understand the process, and to make sure that we are successful. So I would appreciate the opportunity to serve the town.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Brandon, floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tracy Mattison Brandon. I have, along with my husband, Marvin, who is a native of Davidson, have moved back to Davidson back in 2009. So we've been here over 12 years. And ever since I've been here, I've been part of community. And so I have worked with DCPC in terms of their room in the inn. I have worked with Ada Jenkins on initiatives, making sure that residents are taken care of with food needs. I have worked with Davidson Lifeline. I serve on that board, as a matter of fact, for mental health and wellness. I have also served on the homelessness task for Davidson Housing Coalition. My background is in IT. However, I have 35 years experience in leadership as well as community involvement. And the things that I'm strong commitment about is that I'm an advocate, I'm a servant leader, and I look at this position as not so much political, but community-minded and community service effort. I'm committed to bridging the gap generationally, ethnically, and also social economic statuses. And I would love and be a privilege to be voted in as one of the board members of the town commissioners. Thank you.
All right, thank you. One thing I want to explain why we may have appeared to jump out of alphabetical order, because I know Mrs. Mattison Brandon actually referred that we would refer to her tonight, just for brevity, by Brandon. So, but we'll consider her full name. So being M, she will be followed by Mrs. Michael.
Well, good evening, y'all. I'm glad to be here tonight. So thank you to the Lake Norman Chamber for hosting us. I am from the region. I grew up in Salisbury, close by to here, and we've been in Davidson for about 15, maybe 16 years. I've got 4 kids in our public schools, teenagers and almost teenagers, heaven help us. I'm a lawyer by training and an adjunct professor in historic preservation and land use law, and have been on the town board for the past 4 years. I feel really good about a lot of the work we've done, which the mayor mentioned at the beginning, and would welcome the opportunity to further some of that work that we still have left to do. You know, I tell folks all the time I'm a public policy nerd, and I tell folks all the time what a privilege it is to be able to direct your town's policy and direction. And it is truly a privilege, and I would be honored to be able to serve our community again.
All right, thank you. Mr. Neal?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Neal, and Thank you for hosting this event. My family and I love Davidson. We've been in Davidson for 11 years now. My wife Becky, and we have 3 beautiful daughters and 2 dogs. We've absolutely loved seeing our kids grow up in a community that we called free range, where kids can still feel safe walking about town, and people knew each other and knew the kids. And we have such a diverse group of friends and community, which we absolutely love. Our first 10 years, we lived in downtown Davidson, and now we live in the new West Branch development on the east side of town. This is the first time for me to be in politics, but, you know, instead of me being a Monday morning quarterback, you know, talking about the problems, I wanted to be part of the solution. I wanted to give back to Davidson as much as Davidson has given myself and my family through the 11 years that we've been here. My simple approach is smart growth for a sustainable future. And I feel like with my business background, domestic and international business development, I can really bring that good sense of understanding risk versus reward when we make decisions. And I really want to foster a community that demonstrates and supports a strong sense of place and enjoyment, love, and respect for others. And I am so grateful to have an opportunity to run for Davidson Commissioner.
All right, thank you for that. Mr. Ryan, you'll close out the opening statements, please, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Russell, thank you very much to the Business Chamber for having me this evening. Thank you for putting this forum together. My name is Dan Ryan, and I'm running for Davidson Town Commissioner. I've never run for public office before. I've been a resident of Davidson for 7 years with my wife and our 2 daughters. We live in Narrow Passage on the eastern side of town. It's an important election in front of the town of Davidson. In recent news, macroeconomic trends around inflation are going to affect every single citizen of this country. And all the way down to the local town level, it's important that you have a board that represents economic interests across the town. I feel I'm well positioned and well suited to do that. And I think having a balanced and sensible approach to these issues that will face the town, whether it's higher gas prices, taxation policy, or higher food prices. We have restaurants in town right now, they're shuttered half the week. We have empty storefronts. And I think it's imperative that the next board not only utilize the American Rescue Plan, but also utilize the budget that's at its disposal to ensure that we have economic diversity, as well as a thriving economic base of business in town to support all of our citizens.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your opening statements. And why don't we just jump right into it with the first question, which will be directed first to Mr. Boyd. And it is, would you be so kind to share your vision for Davidson?
Excuse me. My vision for Davidson is a continuation of its current status as a charming town where people feel safe to walk and bike around town, where we have different commercial options and more commercial options. As Mr. Ryan mentioned, there are some restaurants and businesses that have struggled recently. I think we need to help figure out solutions to that. I have a vision for a cleaner, more well cared for downtown with better sidewalks and tree cover and buried power lines, hopefully a car-free downtown on Main Street at some point. That might just be one day a week, but I definitely have a big vision for that.
All right, thank you. Ms. Campbell.
I think the next board will be facing some of the same challenges, and my vision is to continue some of the things that we've already been working on, and it's things that other boards have worked for before us, which is trying to balance the historic character of our small college town with the dynamic growth pressures that surround us. And one only has to look pretty much every single day, whether we're looking at transportation issues, be that vehicular or bike ped, but we will be facing those types of issues. But we will also continue to face what I think are the critically important issues of an inclusive community. So anybody who knows the work that I've been involved in over the last 4 years is sometime, somewhere during every board meeting, I will attempt to bring up the topic of affordable housing. And we have to talk about affordable housing in our community, and we have to talk about living wages. So if reelected, my vision will continue to bring those ideas to the forefront and into our conversations.
Great, thank you. Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah, thank you. 20 years ago, it was the citizens and the excellence of our town that kind of hooked me. I've been thrilled to be back. My vision for the town as I continue to live here and serve here is truly to continue the legacy that's kind of preceded me. And that is long-term, well-done planning with a long-range view that's gotten us to where we are today, and it will get us to where we want to be next. We've got key plans, key parts of plans that I would hope that we can continue to implement. Some need to be furthered along in their process, including key parts in the mobility plan, the comprehensive plan. We've been working deliberately to improve our processes under that comp plan that were born from the ideas from the community in that process. And I think it's really key that our board be very disciplined and take a very tactful approach in our process, because what that's going to do is lead to the improved infrastructure, lead to the expanded affordable housing, and lead to that improved multimodal elements of mobility that everyone in the community has voiced support for. It's not my agenda that I come into, it's not my vision, it's the community vision that I really want to help the community achieve. And so that's in a nutshell my vision. I would add one thing. I know it's top of mind of anyone who has young children in schools. We need to open up a better dialogue, and we've already made those kind of conversations about that in our processes and how to better receive information and work together with CMS to improve our schools and planning for that.
Great, thank you. Mr. Fay?
Yeah, so I think when you look at the vision for the town, I think you really have to look at our core values, and I believe very strongly in them. To me, we need to continue to be a small college town that's diverse, and diverse not only through our ethnicities, but also through age and socioeconomic needs. I think we're a town that needs to be united, and we're going to do that through community events, as well as being connected through greenways, side paths, and better infrastructure for our citizens. I want to continue to offer the best services and the services that our residents are interested in the town. And I think the way we do that is by really influencing our economic development and having the opportunity to build our tax base. Right now, we rely on 60% of our revenue comes through resident taxes. And I think there's an opportunity to increase our business base, particularly over in East Davidson, where we have some opportunities there. I also look to preserve our tree canopy and to create a sustainable future. Companies like Boomerang Water, who Jason Dibble and I have had some good conversations, is an excellent company that could really set a standard for Davidson. So that's the vision that I share.
Thank you. Mrs. Brandon.
I believe the vision that what I envision for Davidson is a community where anyone who wants to live here can live here, that there is an inclusion factor, that there is an environment where people will feel included, where there's intentionality to make sure that we reach out to bring people into the discussions. When we look at the table, we want to ask the question, who's missing, and then be intentional about reaching out to those people. I would love a community that embraces the power of diversity, and that diversity also includes diversity in thought, experience, culture, ethnicity, ages, and socioeconomic status. I think that we need to create an environment where everyone feels like they belong and they can have the opportunity to be heard. So with that, I see a community that's more connected and not just, physically through the greenways, as one of the other candidates says, but also in activity in terms of bringing cultures together so that we can learn from one another. I think there's brilliancy within this community, and I just hope that we can continue to have the opportunity to hear from those people.
Great. Mrs. Michael.
Thank you. I'd say my vision aligns with our core values as well, of being a small historic college town. You know, Commissioner Campbell and I have had the opportunity to meet with folks who've just moved to town several times before COVID stopped our in-person meetings. And inevitably, folks will say they came here for the college connection and the experience of the college here, as well as the quality of life of our greenways, our recreation opportunities, our sidewalks. There's nothing like a Saturday morning in Davidson with the farmers market active, with all the cyclists, folks running. It's really just such a quintessential kind of wonderful place to live. I think we continue that through really focused asset-based economic development. Our brand is that historic college town. And so from an economic development perspective, I think it's really important that we keep to that. I'm super excited about the potential redevelopment of the Linden Mill as an example of that place-based development, in addition to our restaurant and local foods culture. So that probably encompasses my vision.
Thank you. Mr. Neal.
And my vision is really working on and building on the cornerstones that many people have put forth within Davidson. I want to continue to see Davidson to grow in instead of outgrow. And what I mean by that is when we grow in, we reinvest in downtown. We create housing opportunities that are affordable and accessible. We diversify our transportation. I mean, we promote safer streets with pedestrians and bicycles and assistive devices that people use. And we protect our green spaces. We will not outgrow Davidson if we invest in local businesses, neighborhood improvements, infrastructure upgrades, and especially stakeholder collaboration. You know, I will encourage that investment in our community that fosters everyone, that people will feel welcomed in Davidson. I'll foster a community that is economically viable, environmentally aware, and really sustainable for the future of Davidson.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ryan.
Senator, my wife and I chose Davidson because of the historic nature of the college town. We love that part of being residents of Davidson. But the fact of the matter is we've experienced 40% growth over a single census cycle of 10 years. Over the last 10 days, 5 of the candidates on this panel tonight have put themselves out there as the Fab Five and running as a slate. And all 5 of them this evening have already said that they want to continue some of the policies and things that have been preceded us. Now, Mayor Knox did a great job of laying a lot of the successes out, but the fact of the matter is we've added a lot of rooftops over the last 10 years in the eastern part of town. We don't have a single restaurant in the eastern part of town. No roads have been updated or upgraded in the eastern part of town. We've added traffic throughout town as a result of that. And it's my candidacy is to be a counterweight to the Fab Five and the idea that we're going to continue as business as usual here in Davidson. We've got more people coming. We've had a lot of people come over the last 10 years, and we need to bring different ideas forward in order to support this growth that we've experienced and that we will continue to experience.
All right, thank you. Well, just as a comment and background, all the questions that are coming in, and we have, are kind of random order, so they could jump around, but a lot of the questions are actually topical to some of the points you've all raised in your introductory statements and in your vision. So the next question will begin with Ms. Campbell, and it's a comment you made in your vision statement. And so sharing with all of you, what does affordable housing look like, and how would you address the issue?
Well, thank you. I think affordable housing looks like many different things. And what we know in Davidson is, and when you hear people talk about affordable housing, if you get into the technical details, it's tagged to area median income. And the town of Davidson started out an affordable housing program more than 2 decades ago. And through the years, we have built and been part of partnering with groups to build affordable rentals and affordable purchase. this board has done a couple of very creative things in working with developers. As you know, the town had an affordable housing ordinance, but at this point, there are developers who can opt to do a payment in lieu. But I just want us to continue to look at the breadth of affordable housing, and that has to be rentals and purchase, and most importantly, maintaining naturally occurring affordable housing, and that's with supporting renovation projects and repair projects for some of our residents who need that in their homes.
All right, thank you. Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah, thank you. And it's a very important question, and it's something that our town has put a lot of very deliberate effort and time and energy into for years, as Jane was just mentioning. It doesn't have one specific appearance. It doesn't have one specific form. It doesn't have to be in any given location. In fact, I think when it's done well, no one knows where it is. People are living here in community among their neighbors where they want to be. It's there because we need to have our community whole. We need to have our firefighters. We need to have our teachers. We need to have our service workers. We need to have people in our community who are part of our community. We don't need to have people only ever able to be here when they come to work and serve and teach our children. So affordable housing done well is almost invisible. It's there because you see the people, but it's for rent, it's for purchase, it's in a variety of contexts and forms. And I'm excited to see our affordable housing plan that's in process and see some of the initiatives that it's going to present. Thank you.
Mr. Fay.
So when I think, like, literally, when you talk about what does affordable housing look like, to Matt's point, I think it looks like the surrounding neighborhood. And that means the style, the size, everything. So recently I had a meet and greet with some folks in St. Albans, and one of the residents there said, there are 8 affordable units in St. Albans, but I can't tell you where they are. And that was a really important thing for me to think about, because I like the fact that you can have an affordable house, but it doesn't stand out and it doesn't look different. I really would like to look at the number of the AMI that we look at. So typically, a lot of our units have been in the 80 to 100% AMI. Some are 100 to 120. I really would like to try to get the developers to start looking at that 60 to 80% AMI. AMI in Davidson is a very big number, and when you're looking at 120% of it, it's still a near 6-figure salary for a family of 4. So we really need to look at how we're doing that, and it's all about working with developers. We need to be aggressive to work with people that we want to, that have the same vision for our town, and try to be proactive instead of being reactive to the developers that are coming to town, and really work with them to create a community that we want.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Brandon.
For me, affordable housing looks like housing where our teachers, our responders, government employees, Davidson College employees, nurses, the working class can afford to live. I agree that it shouldn't stand out necessarily in one area, but it should be affordable housing through all the different neighborhoods that are make up Davidson. I think that one key thing that we need to look at is we need to reassess the definition of affordable housing with the AMI, and looking at what really makes sense, what to redefine affordable, because a lot of people, as it is defined now, it is exclusive instead of inclusive. And the other thing that I see as affordable housing is the need to make sure that we have senior housing that's affordable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Michael.
Thank you. So I think that affordable housing is such a multi-layered problem, and it requires just a really multi-layered solution and a number of solutions. I'm very proud of our current town board and the work we've done on institutionalizing affordable housing within our local town government through the hiring of our affordable housing director and formalizing our affordable housing board as a standing committee. And we've gotten about 25 units-ish, more or less, through our payment in lieu program, where we work with developers in terms of getting houses on the ground. I think it's important that we continue that program, that inclusionary zoning program, as well as look at the naturally occurring affordable and our single family residential, and then look for potential partnerships and potential funding, perhaps with ARP. We don't know what that funding is going to look like yet in terms of parameters, but for any new build, rental, and ownership. So it's a multifaceted problem with just a multifaceted slate of solutions.
Okay, Mr. Ryan, or I'm sorry, Mr. Neal. I'll get you guys in proper order here.
You know, the other candidates make such great points on the affordable housing. I mean, it's truly one of our, I would say, all of our pillars, one of our pillars of our platform is to continue down the path of affordable housing. But I feel Tracy makes a very good point in that we need to unpack what affordable housing means. We need to maybe create more definition on what it means on inclusivity versus exclusivity, what it means on affordability within Davidson. You know, I'm a big fan of having affordable housing opportunities and choices for families throughout Davidson. It should not be in one area or another, it should be throughout. I mean, we could look at the Hoke project that's going on in the Hoke lumber area, where it was probably more of a benchmark and a model that we could look at. We lean on developers to create affordable housing, design it that looks like every other house in the neighborhood, that people can really feel proud of living in Davidson and can afford Davidson as well.
All right, and Mr. Ryan.
Affordable housing is a core value of the town. And I think it's important that the local government understands what it can do to facilitate affordable housing within the town of Davidson. And, you know, there are things that the government can do and there are things that the government can't do. As been referenced earlier, the town of Davidson has the highest AMI in the state, if not the highest, is in the top 3. And add to the fact that Davidson dirt and real estate in this town has gone up at least 50% in the last 12 months, maybe even more in some neighborhoods, depending on where you are. So those are macroeconomic factors that must be part of this discussion. And taking money from a developer and putting in the payment in lieu fund, I think is great. I think what the previous board has done around that is appropriate. And I think those dollars being used around historic preservation for some of the historic neighborhoods in town is absolutely appropriate and something that should be continued. But when we talk about a long-term vision for affordable housing, we've got to factor in the fact that AMI in this area is extremely high and that the cost for real estate, it continues to go up. So as we develop these plans and develop targets that the town can actually hit, we've got to bring those factors in to bear. Otherwise, we'll just have a program that lives in perpetuity and that we, you know, continue to fund, but we don't see the results that the town wants to. So I think we've got to bring a practical approach to affordable housing, look at it like it's a business, and execute against goals, specific goals that are attainable. And I think we'd have a much more successful road down the road.
All right, thank you. Mr. Boyd.
It's hard to follow such good answers. I'll do my best. I think affordable housing in the past has tended to refer to home ownership. And I'm glad to see there's somewhat of a shift in my view towards considering rentals as a very viable path towards affordability for a lot of families. A lot of people don't want to own, they want to rent. They may have different goals than those of us who feel like homeownership is the primary goal. As others alluded to with the real estate boom the last couple of years, this post-COVID pricing now is certainly changing the whole landscape of affordability in general. I do think we need more apartments and townhouses. And of course, that means a little more density, more traffic. So how do we deal with that? These are the practical considerations around affordability and affordable housing that we need to consider. I do like townhouses. As I mentioned, I own a few townhouses. I'm very proud of the fact that I think a few of mine are the most affordable rentals in town and have not raised rent on my tenants ever since the beginning of their leases. So I'm a big believer in affordable housing, and I think I do it. And I'm really proud that I manage my own properties, fix stuff, keep costs down. I'm on 2 HOA boards here as well, and am very strict about not increasing dues for no reason and being a good fiscal steward of those monies to keep it more affordable.
All right, wonderful. We're going to begin the next question with Mr. Dellinger. For some of you, as you know, we talked about growth, and my family will have been part of the Davidson community for 30 years come May. My kids have gone to CMS schools in Davidson. My wife's medical practice has been here the entire time. And when we joined our church here 30 years ago, we were 375 members. Today, we're over 4,000. So just that number alone, the perspective and the growth. So the question becomes, there's some sense Davidson is losing its small Southern college town feel. What, if anything, should the town do about it? So Mr. Dellinger, you're on the spot first.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a kind of a very personal and sensitive matter for a lot of people. The way I've kind of reflected on that question in the past almost 2 years now has been COVID kind of opened our eyes to how much community is here, how much we're not losing that sense of small town feel, that sense of neighborly love and support, which is really at the core of why anyone would ever crave small town feel. We've got our historic downtown that obviously adds charm, that gives people outlets. It gives people that kind of feel that, as was alluded to earlier, Saturday mornings are spectacular. That's not gone away. But we do have some growth pressures that are very real. And I think we've continued to grow in a fairly smart, tactful way without losing our small town feel. And I would hope that we can continue to do that and continue to look to each other to retain the small town feel.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fay.
So yeah, I've talked to residents who say, you know, I want Davidson to be a small college town, not a town with a small college. And so that's something that we really have to take a look at. It starts with looking at the infill opportunities to develop areas that are already in existence or have been developed but have fallen to the wayside. Looking at that north-south Main Street corridor and developing some business along that area really helps to do our village center growth. If you look at the 2021, 2022 budget, there is an opportunity and there's some discussion regarding purchasing property development rights. And I think that's something that I would definitely like to explore further. Not necessarily that we would be developing those locations, but that we would at least have the first opportunity if a property were to become available that we could take a look at it. So again, it's about looking at our center, the center of our city, building outward. But I think that the planning has been good. The plans that are put in place have been solid, and we just need to continue on that path and really focus on our infrastructure, because as our population has grown, our streets have stayed the same for 50 plus years. And so people aren't able to move through town quickly. And that's something we really have to focus on.
All right. Appreciate the input. Mrs. Brandon.
Yes, growth is probably inevitable in some ways or another. And how we handle it is very important. The board is making decisions that affect our day-to-day lives. And I think that it is a balance between wanting, growth that benefits us economically as a town, but doesn't overtake us as a people. And so there's certain things that are put into place, and you see them, right now, and I would love to build upon it, is communities coming together. You see people meeting, behind Summit. You see people in small groups. The green activities bring us together. It brings us across the tracks, and so that we're interacting with one another. We have book clubs that are formed with people from various neighborhoods, not just in one church, not just in one location, but in various neighborhoods. And so I think that as we look at it, we need to consider how it affects us socially. And I think that as a community, we don't want to lose that sense of community and the real heart of Davidson is why we even moved here in the first place.
Appreciate that. Mrs. Michael?
Thank you. So I think that our board has thought very intentionally about this particular issue around that core value of sort of protecting the small town college character. We have implemented started a historic preservation plan to really focus on maintaining the community character while of course allowing appropriate infill. We focus very early on around the missing middle, which is removing that really high-end sort of Charlotte type density and focusing on village scale density, which I think is important to maintaining that community character as well. And as Tracy alluded to, in terms of the greenways and the walkability and those third places, the town green and the area behind Summit, the soccer fields at River Run, lots of those third places where people can, Ada Jenkins, where people can gather together are really important to maintain that character. Thanks,
All right,
Bill.
thank you. And as you guys see me drifting my eyes off from the screen, I'm just trying to keep track because we'll get questions in through texting and stuff as well that I'll keep an eye on. So Mr. Neal, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, downtown Davidson obviously is the epicenter of Davidson. When it comes to community, it comes to the college, it comes to involvement, it comes to activity. But we really need to be astutely aware of our growth that we've had in Davidson, and to understand that when we have that growth, we need to put some plans in place to, if we have the epicenter of Davidson to be the town that we love and enjoy, we've got to put some plans in place for pedestrian safety. We need to put some infrastructure in place of how we widen the roads or add additional parking. Again, not losing that small town feel. We have other areas within Davidson, the east side and the west side, that we can really diversify our tax base and really start looking at bringing in corporate partners or retail partners that we can look at Davidson holistically, still keep that small town feel, but be able to spread out and grow within the other areas of Davidson.
Okay, Mr. Ryan.
You know, the problem, Senator, is all these Yankees that have moved here, and they don't seem to be stopping. And I'm just kidding. I'm from the Northeast, for those of you that don't know me. So, you know, the brick sidewalks and the college buildings, that's why we chose Davidson. We drove around with the real estate agent, and we looked in Cornelius and we looked in Huntersville, and it was the charm of downtown Davidson of what we fell in love with rather immediately. And I think from a local board perspective, what can be done, I think some of the great things that have been done are the concerts on the green, and who could argue with Christmas in Davidson? It's a Norman Rockwell painting. Everyone loves Christmas in Davidson. We have people that come visit us just to be a part of Christmas in Davidson. And I think those type of community events and activities should be continued. And I think we should look at other options. And I'll say this, economic diversity, there aren't very many areas for behind Summit is certainly one place, and we go there and we take advantage of that. But in the eastern part of town, where more residents live than in any other part of town, there's no brewery, there's no outdoor restaurant space. I think that type of business being available or being around drives community, because folks go there, after work or after soccer practice or after school, and that's where you can drive that continued sense of community. I don't want to see drive-throughs here, but I do think we do need some more economic diversity, more economic options to help drive that sense of community, both in downtown Davidson as well as some of the outlying areas.
Great. Just as an FYI, the Christmas in Davidson special for our family, our church, but it is the couple nights a year where my IQ doubles, because I get to portray a wise man for a couple evenings, but then it drops right back. So with that, I'm going to direct that question to Mr. Boyd.
I thought I recognized you from somewhere, Mr. Tarte. Now I got it figured out. So nostalgia definitely is a tough animal to fight, right? We all kind of long for the old days of how we knew it and how we liked it. And I'm guilty of that in many respects in life too. I do think though that it's overcompensated for options that are provided to us through growth. Now, if you came here 20 years ago and there were maybe one or two restaurants downtown, the soda shop and something else. So I'm sure people like having more options now and more things to do, like the social events and festivities around Summit, et cetera. Those all come with growth. And I think to other candidates' comments, the previous boards have done a good job at managing that. So I do think we can preserve some of those warm and fuzzies by really preserving the downtown. And no offense to our friends in the east, but I do want to have some public transport to bring them into downtown more often too. But if we can reduce the number of trucks downtown and cars in general, as I mentioned, I'd love to see a day a week with no cars. But the truck thing alone, I feel like I'm in New York City when I'm having dinner at Mestizos outside. And I think those sort of things really play a big role into how we feel about growth.
All right, Ms. Campbell.
Sure. And I'll actually finish his list. It was actually, if you go back the 30+ years, it was the soda shop and Peregrine House. And then you had to go all the way up to Mooresville to go to the Buttery and Beanery. But you had some good restaurant options. I look at this in terms of losing that small Southern character. And I'm also reminded of the fact that we can't just keep looking at it in like if we were going to go back to a bubble of something that in the past. And that's what the challenge that the town board has to do, is they have to take that balance of an ideal and mesh it with the reality of the pressures that come with the dynamics of the region. I said it 2 years ago, if not 4 years ago, that when I went to college, Davidson was the biggest of the 3 towns. And so we're no longer the biggest of the 3 towns, but that's just fine. But I'll close in saying that we also have to realize that some of that history is not an equal history. It's filled with inequities. It's filled with discrimination. And so I'm always very cautious of going back and trying to say we need to make it look more like it was, because there are residents in our community who weren't equal and didn't have what we believe as an ideal Davidson.
All right, throw this out and to throw people off a little bit. And Mr. Fay, you're going to get to start with this question. So when you bring your kids into town to grab a milkshake at the M&M, and that's a specific, you guys will have to do some digging in the books for some to know what the M&M is. The question becomes, that was put forward, how would you suggest improving parking on and around Main Street?
So that's a really good question. Obviously, I have been one of those residents who has gotten up on a Saturday morning to head to the farmer's market, and 15 minutes later, I'm still looking for parking. There are a number of smart parking options that you can look at with identifying where open spots are and how people can find those open spots to park. Again, partnering with our local community, the churches and other places in town, to be able to provide with them loaning their parking to our residents on those particularly large events are things that we need to do. But really, it comes down to using technology. And I think that's the biggest piece of it. It's allowing residents to find where are parking spots currently available, where can they park, using wayfinding signs to allow them to say, hey, if we aren't available at the spot, or you can't find parking here, head down just another block on the right, we have an additional parking spot. Just making people aware and marketing where our parking can be.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Brandon.
I would agree with Mr. Fay that one of the things in some other even college towns that I've seen is that app where you can find local parking, and it makes it a lot easier. However, sometimes we get to the place where there's so much traffic downtown that there's not enough space to accommodate it. So that where we have to come into play where we can do some additional, actually create some more parking. And we don't know exactly what all is going to happen with the asbestos site in the development and the plans with it, but that's one of the things that has been talked about is, creating more parking on that site and not having to dig. So that's one option. Other options are, I know it's about parking, but also just encouraging people to ride their bikes and walk. And that's where the infield comes into place, and the greenways to make that possible so that there's less traffic and less a need for even parking.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Michael.
Thank you. So I think the statement about encouraging folks to walk is really wonderful for those of us who live close enough to town to be able to do it. And I think that's part of the whole Davidson experience that many of us are describing now too. there is certainly an opportunity for mutually beneficial parking and agreements that we've done, for instance, with Davidson Presbyterian Church. We have shuttle services. I think during Christmas in Davidson, we had a shuttle service at one point that was going up and down Concord Road that we were piloting. That would be wonderful to look at that again. And I think the wayfinding and the technology, we've done any number of parking studies, and the parking problems seem to be very tied to events and sort of preschool drop off in the morning and lunchtime when people are coming downtown to restaurants. And so those kind of apps, I think that they were demonstrating for us around literally like a green light showing to say there's parking in this particular spot, that seemed very, very attractive and something that we should look into as a board.
All right, thank you. Mr. Neal?
Yeah, people bike and they walk to downtown, which is great. And we need to encourage that more and drive awareness around that and improve our green spaces and our walkways and our sidewalks so they can safely do that. But we can also look at alternative options. We talk about expanding parking but we need to really look at the alternative options that we may have. Autumn brought up the trolley, which I think is a great service that I think it needs to be continued, not necessarily on special events, but it could be a Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday event every weekend to alleviate some traffic burden that happens in downtown on those days. Having trolley service set up and drive that awareness that it picks up the east or the west side of the communities, and continue to look at ways that we can work with the college and the local churches to provide access and accessible parking for people who are driving in. And there are a number of different ways that we need to look at that, but not building additional parking spaces. We need to look at more alternative options for our parking challenges within Davidson.
All right, Mr. Ryan?
Yeah, I work in IT. I think the idea of an IT solution to solve this problem is, I would normally meet that favorably. But my father was here a couple of weeks ago. He's 75. He doesn't know how to use Uber. So I don't know how, we're going to translate a parking application to everyone across town. And I get that maybe people that are listening to this or watching this now might be able to grab a hold of that and use it, but that's not going to solve the problem. I think we need to not encourage bike riding. We have to incentivize it. We have to give people places to put their bikes safely. And then we have to give them paths that they can ride safely also into town. That way that it discourages cars. I mean, the number one thing that the town can do is discourage car use. And that doesn't mean we widen roads. That means we give options for people to do things other than get in their car. So I think that's, there are different solutions for that, but I think that's something that the board should explore. The 800-pound gorilla here is the college. It sits right in the middle. We're either going to work with the college to figure out some of these problems, or we're going to continue to have the problems. We've all talked about growth. The growth has happened. The growth will continue to happen. We've got a monster tenant right in the middle of town, and we're either going to figure out other solutions with the churches, which I think have been referenced. I think those are great, but those are not going to solve the long-term parking issues that are relevant right now in town and will only get worse. When the storefronts between Mestizo and Kindred get filled with whatever goes in there, that's going to be more cars and more parking spots that are going to be needed. Having auxiliary lots here or there just on the weekends, I mean, that's going to provide a little bit relief, but we need a long-term comprehensive traffic but more importantly, to answer the question, we need a parking solution for downtown Davidson. Otherwise, our children will be dealing with this question in 20 years.
All right, Mr. Boyd.
I agree. There is sufficient parking. I think many of us are not willing to walk more than a block to go to our favorite shop. I do think there's enough parking, especially if you count the church parking lots, some of the college parking lots, even behind Main Street, over towards exit 30, there's spots back there. I also think that we could either build a parking structure of some sort. Maybe it's under the green. I'm not sure what's underneath there, but could we do an underground parking deck? I don't know. Just tossing it out there. But I agree, though, that the traffic needs to be addressed as part of that parking issue. And one idea that I would have which comes from my time living in Bogota, Colombia. They have a program called Pico y Placa, which means if your license plate begins with the letter D or E, you can't park your car downtown on Mondays. If it's M and N, it's Tuesdays. Let's try something like that. Let's be creative and figure out ways to get people to try other options.
All right, thank you. Ms. Campbell.
Well, I think some folks have already talked about it, but I'm going to try to touch on a couple of different ideas. One, I didn't drive a car today. Every errand, everything I did today was on a bicycle. So trying to start with being leading by example. We've already talked about the technology. I was part of the Charlotte Airport Aviation Academy 2 years ago, pre-COVID, and we talked about that smart parking technology, that when you're going to go to the airport in the future, you will not only be, have your flight reservation, but you'll have your parking space reservation. And so when you get there, you'll go to level 3, row 6, parking space 15, and you won't drive around their parking garage. So the technology exists right there. And to one of the points that's already been made, I would say go back and look when this board reviewed the parking study that was done, and it kind of goes to the point. Yes, there are an awful lot of people who are not willing to walk a block. We can't dismiss that though. So that parking study found that given the business, everything like that, we actually do have enough parking. Let me do my last, which out of the box idea. I've been looking at a thing called rail bikes, and I talk to folks as I'm walking around town. I still think it's going to be a long shot to get Norfolk Southern to come online to be part of the discussion, but these are literally bike carts that go on the rail tracks. And can you imagine if everybody who lives up in Davidson Point could put on a rail car, or who lives in Cornelius and get on a rail car and use that as their mode of transportation to come to the farmers market on Saturday morning? It'd be awesome. So let's keep thinking outside the box.
All right, thank you. Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah, thank you. So a lot of great ideas have been shared, and I'm actually grateful that a lot of them have been echoing the mobility plan that was adopted over 2 years ago. They just haven't been implemented, and I think that's important. The wayfinding, the shared parking program, performance-based parking ideas, all of that's been in our mobility plan. We just haven't done anything with it other than know that it's there. So I think that's part of what we need to do. We need to really kind of invest in really targeting, trying to see how that is potentially going to help our issues. The question I believe you said is, how do you improve parking? And so I don't think it's limited to just expanding parking. I think safety has to play into that too. And as everyone knows, pedestrian safety is a topic that's right on the tip of everyone's mind right now. And so some ideas that have been tossed around, I'm not sure that they would work, but reverse angle parking on Main Street, improving some of the ways that some of that space is designed. Obviously, we don't want to lose it because we don't want to hinder or hurt our Main Street businesses. That's part of the reason we need parking. But infill development as well along Main Street will improve it, because you'll have more spaces coming on, especially as the South Main Street continues to develop. So I think we've got a lot of energy. We've got ideas. We just need to implement them.
All right, that takes us, going to bring us more than just a tip of the tongue and thought, top of the head, but it's going to be the next question. And Mrs. Brandon is going to be directed to you first. We who have been around a little while recognize we've had a couple tragic pedestrian events. We lost a very close friend and lady from our church recently. And so the question that was asked is, what would you like to see the town do to improve pedestrian safety?
I think that one of the things that we can do to improve pedestrian safety is making the crosswalks more visible and making the signage more visible. I often am going down Concord Road, and right in front of the DCPT school, they have this, homemade created sign, but it's a bright, vibrant yellow, and it says, "Thank you for, considering our kids, being safe for our kids, keeping our kids safe." That's what it says. And it is something that stands out to me and makes me think as a driver to be cautious, but also as a pedestrian to be cautious. We can't forget those deaths, because those lives were not lost in vain, but we need to remember the safety and keep each other accountable. One of the persons I was talking to in our community, he wanted to jaywalk and his wife says, wait, no, wait, you know just what happened. And so there was a check and balance right there for him to go to the crosswalk and actually walk across it. And also we need to eliminate blind spots. There's several blind spots on my side of the town where I live in West Davidson, and I would really like that to be addressed.
All right, very good. Mrs. Michael.
Thank you. It has been a tragic year in pedestrian safety and a tragic past few years for that matter. I'm looking forward to our pedestrian safety task force coming through with recommendations for us. I love that we as a town look at community-based solutions like this task force and what they are going to bring. In my own research, I know communities are looking at Vision Zero programs, which are zero fatalities, as well as many cities in North Carolina use this 3E model of engineering, enforcement, and education as the 3 E's. And I think we're working towards some of that now in terms of engineering with replacing our signals and the hawk signals at our crosswalks. And from an education perspective, certainly breaking some of the norms around how we cross streets is important. And then from the enforcement perspective, whether it be increased ticketing or some sort of positive behavioral reinforcement of, you do this way and then you get a certificate to Ben and Jerry's or something like that. And I think that is on the enforcement side. So those 3 elements would be important.
All right, thank you. Mr. Neal.
Pedestrian safety is definitely a cornerstone that the town needs to address. Unfortunately, lost 3 lives within the past 5 to 6 years concerning pedestrian safety. You know, talking about jaywalking enforcement, I mean, really, that's where we need to carry the stick instead of the carrot, right? We need to have Davidson police walking the sidewalks and enforcing and in reminding people to use the crosswalks instead of jaywalking. Awareness is one that we really need to embrace. I mean, we've got some arrogance here in Davidson, and the arrogance, I mean, that traffic's going to stop because I'm walking across the street, or I'm going to jaywalk in the middle between the 2 crosswalks. We need to drive more awareness of using crosswalks. And last but not least is really like big cities. If we're all in the big cities and there's pedestrians that are walking, all traffic stops. You don't have someone making a right-hand turn. You don't have someone turning left. All traffic stops. Pedestrians walk across. So simple measures like that we can do to improve pedestrian safety, and rerouting traffic is another one that we should address as well.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, this is an important issue. You know, as I mentioned when we opened, I'm a father with 2 young daughters, and several of us have younger children that we like to enjoy downtown, the green, the area. This issue is very close to home, and I think it's very important. I think it's something that this government can do something about. I was at the June 23rd board meeting when we were promised action with haste, and after that tragic accident in the middle of June. And you know, I'm using this as an example to highlight that the board has, in my mind, has an obligation for the safety of the public to take action. And in this case, they took that burden of action and put it onto a pedestrian task force. Now, I agree that we should have a pedestrian task force, but I think the pedestrian task force is an and solution. There's a very quick solution to this that I think just having police present on Main Street, whether we even give out warnings or not, will do 2 things. Number 1, it'll make people think twice before they jaywalk. And number 2, you know, the biggest issue I think we face and our children face is distracted driving. People that are looking at their phones. You don't have to go 10 feet to see somebody looking at their phone when they're driving. If you have a police officer or police presence in the area, people are more aware of what they're doing. And I think I think it's an obligation of our local government to engage our police community, to have them more present. And if you want to do a 30 or 60-day trial period where they're handing out warnings of people that are illegally crossing the street, or if they see a driver with a cell phone in their hands at a stoplight, again, a warning. And then you take that data, you calculate, you figure out whether it's an effective program or not. But we've got to start changing the culture here. I sit at Good Drip Coffee every morning, and every morning there's multiple people that are walking directly across the street, 10 feet away from the crosswalk.
All right.
We've got to change the behavior.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Boyd?
There's the button. I agree that distracted people, both drivers and pedestrians, bike riders, skateboarders, is kind of another pandemic of our day and needs to be addressed. Whether it's friends and family encouraging one another, hey, you're driving your car, please put your phone down. Or son, when you ride your bike today, please watch what you're doing, watch where you're going, and put a helmet on as well. So I think there's kind of a societal effort we all need to make. I do agree / deterrence. I've never seen a cop on Main Street. I understand people don't want to get ticketed every day and it would look bad for the town. But again, having someone just walk down the street, a policeman or a woman, you see that and you're not going to jump across the street. To bring another example from South America, they had similar problems in another city, and they hired a theater group from a local university to act as mimes and be in the middle of a safe intersection in the street and actually call people out. So as you're walking across the street in your phone, the mime would approach you and kind of funnily get in your face to make you think, whoa, what am I doing wrong here? And it worked. They actually had very good data behind that program and implemented it across the whole city and the country. It was a big success. I think, yeah, we can be creative and not feel like we're living in a police state, but there has to be enforcement.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Campbell?
Again, one of the most difficult things for our community, loss of Robert Whitten, Janet McFadden, Suzanne Younts. Each life was special to people in our community, families, church families, etc. And you go back and you look at each instance and there's not a perfect solution that you could have implemented the next day. I agree. I'd love to have an answer right now. But I supported the fact that having that community input for what is a community issue, but we still have to keep the emphasis on the right results. I did have an interesting conversation with someone yesterday who was concerned. One, very much supportive of the fact that this current board has moved with having the rapid flashing beacons they're coming down Concord Road and improving those intersections. But she said, I now worry about the fact that people will just draw complacent because it's just another one of those. So to Tracy's point, I mean, we still have to work on drivers, and the pedestrians, but it's the driver who's in the vehicle that's going to kill or injure the pedestrian.
All right. Thank you. All right, Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah, thank you. So a number of people have already touched on this. We've got a pedestrian safety task force actively at work. I know they had a meeting last night. They're close to having a potential report to present. I'm excited to see the ideas. They've got some wonderful people working on that. They put a lot of time and energy into it. We have some experts working on that we're very lucky to have in our town who bring their professional expertise. I think that's something that, I mean, all due respect to our current board doesn't have that expertise. It was valuable to get that input, not just from our community, because you always want community input, but from the experts. So a few things. Vision Zero, that's something they were actively talking about. The 3 E's, engineering, enforcement, and education, that's invaluable. Our mobility plan brought out a lot of ideas that, again, I know we're government, it takes time. Sometimes funding also inhibits the ability to get things, but we have intersection improvements in that mobility plan that will add to improve safety, the crosswalk treatments. All that's going to take time. Unfortunately, we can't do it overnight, but there are ideas that will be implemented, and we just need to continue to work at it and be intentional and have things in place so that we can go after the resources and the funding to assist us in achieving those.
All right, much appreciated. Mr. Fay.
So jaywalking is obviously a huge concern. And I sat the other day, I was on my way to Summit and I ran into somebody that was part of the pedestrian task force. And we watched numerous people jaywalk. And some type of presence is the business owners are asking for it. And I know that we are tight when it comes to police officers, but we really do need to look at having some kind of enforcement. We can't hand out tickets for jaywalking. They would have to go all the way down to downtown Charlotte to go to court with the police officer and the violator. And that makes no sense. And our police officers aren't going to do that. But honestly, most of these people, there have been conversations that several of these people weren't even jaywalking. So really it is the safety of the street that is extremely important. There's something called a leading pedestrian interval that the town put into place not too long ago. And the DOT says that that can be anywhere from 3 to 10 seconds. I've measured ours at the intersection of Concord Road and Main Street, and it's 3 seconds. I'd like to see us extend that a little bit further. Also take that down to Flatiron, make sure we're having a longer pedestrian interval. Flashing in-road beacons are extremely important. In my hometown in California, they've been putting those in place where they've had pedestrian issues. And it really does bring to light that the crosswalk is there and that people are anticipating. And it comes down to marketing. We need to just make sure people are aware that they need to be safe.
All right, great responses from each of you. Mrs. Michael, inquiring minds want to know, where do greenways, parks, and recreation opportunities fit in your priorities?
Thank you. I think those have been a top priority of mine, both professionally with my work with my former work with the Lands Conservancy, as well as the work we've done on the board in the past 4 years. As you all know, we had a Parks Greenway and Mobility Bond that passed in 2017. And we were hesitant to spend that or to allocate that until we understood the revaluation and full tax implications of that and fiscal impact of that. But have issued those, prepared to issue those this year so that we get some of those parks and greenway amenities through that bond. Some of those that would be funded would be Beatty Park or some amenities at Beatty Park, which also received a state PARTIF grant recently, in addition to restrooms at Fisher Farm Park. And greenways, we were looking at the Greenway Trail, and actually just this past week talked about the River Run, moving up the River Run to Summers Walk Trail. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. Mr. Neal?
Yes, absolutely. We need to continue to look at ways to improve our greenways, to extend them, to finish funding for parks, to include restrooms and facilities when you can enjoy them. We need to continue to explore other areas within Davidson to have improved green space. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we need to consider some dog parks. We have dog owners here in town and walking dogs on the sidewalks and on greenways, but it'd be great to have dog parks in some of these areas as well, that we can enjoy our furry friends out on the day too. So,
all right, thank you. Mr. Ryan?
I think this is very important. There are many, many young children in town, and I think, having a robust park system is quite important. Not only just for the summer months, but throughout the year, it drives a lot of that sense of community that we've talked about earlier. Specifically, though, what I'd like to see is some of the American Rescue Plan dollars used for McEver Field. We've got this great resource this great plot of baseball fields that I realize that not every family is going to take advantage of it, but there's a league of 400 plus Davidson families that are there every weekend. And those fields could really use an upgrade, not only in the fields, but the facilities themselves. Davidson K-8 could take advantage of that as well. And I think that as commissioners, or as candidates for commissioner, we've got to take forward ideas. Like some of these ideas may not get adopted, but we don't really talk about what we're going to do with that money. That money's coming in the next 12 to 24 months. It's here now, but I mean, how that money gets spent, I think, is a major focal point has got to be around parks. And secondly, around land conservation. We've got an amazing organization here in town. Autumn's already referenced it. Sorry, Commissioner Michael's already referenced it with the Lands Conservancy. They don't have an endowment. They work kind of at the mercy of property owners. And I think we've got to give them tools. And the way we do that is through direct public dollars to ensure that not only we have greenway connections, but that we also have land conservation in town. Because, you know, there's only so much land left here in Davidson, and we'll have a choice. This next government, the government after, will have a choice. We can either develop every single ounce of land that's out there, or we can work and enable and empower an organization like the Lands Conservancy to preserve some of our green space.
All right, thank you. Ms. Campbell.
Doesn't Mr. Boyd get to go in?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess we probably should let Jeff go. Sorry about that. Good catch. Keep me on the straight and narrow.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate that catch. So the question was, where does it rank in our list of priorities? For me, I'd put that definitely top 3, probably right after that free ice cream cone that Mrs. Michaels promised for crossing the crosswalk in good fashion. But in all seriousness, I do think the board has done a good job at prioritizing greenways, parks, and other recreational activities for our residents. And I would certainly be a big fan of pushing more of that.
All right. Ms. Campbell, the floor is now yours. Thanks.
Okay. So not to be repetitive, because I think Autumn really touched on a lot of the things that that this current board has done. I will add the fact that as some of you have watched some of the ways that we do this, we do our best to have, especially our bicycle pedestrian projects, be viable for Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization grants. And when we are able to do that, when we have an approved plan that's approved by the board, we go in for CRTPO grants. So we get an 80-20 match, so that we are doing that with 20% Davidson dollars and 80% match dollars, which makes a lot of the projects more feasible for a financial reason. But let me say one thing that's really important about this, because with our emphasis on parks, greenways, and recreation, none of us yet have talked about the people. And I will tell you, between Jesse Bauk's team in Public Works and Leslie Willis's team in our Parks and Recreation, you can have a ton of stuff, but if you don't have the amazing teams and the amazing people behind it to make those facilities what they are, you know, we used to say you can have a lot of ships and a lot of things in the Navy, but if you don't have the sailors to man them, what good are they? So people.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah, thank you. So the greenways and parks question and recreational activities, it's obviously critical in town. It's something that everyone cherishes and seeks out. And it's something that I think adds to how special of a town we live in. The mobility plan, again, I hate to continue to sound like a broken record, but I spent, I don't know, almost 2 years consistently throughout 2 years working on it tirelessly, working with our 2 transportation planners ago, Travis, and our most recent one in the implementation part, talking through the critical criteria that we were looking at and having to rank those projects, understanding, as Jane was alluding to, the kind of algorithm, the way that CRTPO looks at ranking and what can elevate something. We actually do a pretty good job in our town of getting our share of money through CRTPO. I think we took a very intentional approach in the mobility plan. There are some key links that I hope we can complete. One is from River Run to Fisher Farm, as alluded to earlier, the link out to Summers Walk. Once you put some of those pieces in, bring in the side path along Gray Road, you've got a pretty good circuit when you map out the route around town, and you can start really connecting people by foot and bike on a very safe route where you don't encounter cars, and you can build that sense of community again.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fay.
Yeah, being able to play where you live is one of the things that makes Davidson such a really special community. Three mornings a week, I wake up and I go down to the Randall Kincaid Greenway and I run, and I see the same people almost every single day enjoying that same greenway. And it's one of the things that I love about my neighborhood, is being able to go on that space. And I want to have that connectivity through all of Davidson. I was really proud to see that the board is prioritizing the connection to Summers Walk, which I think brings them more into the community. Obviously, the more the more people that we can move onto greenways, the better we have safety for pedestrians as well, because they're off the roads. I'm a big side path person. I think that the side path along Davidson Concord Road, which is another place that I run, is great. But let's just think about this. We have one of my favorite places in Davidson to go is Fisher Farm, to go riding my mountain bike and to go running with my kids. Abersham is a wonderful facility where we're able to really enjoy some good quality family time. And now if you watched the board meeting the other day, we're talking about having this Beatty Park that's going to be like a small central park in the middle of Davidson. That's really special. When you look at that village, center village area, and you see this central park type park that's going to really kind of define Davidson and allow us to get together and unite as a community in that special location.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Brandon, you get the last word on looking at the time of the last question for all the candidates. So the floor is yours.
So for me, the greenways, walkways, and parks are all indicative of connecting us. And so one of the things that I see that we need to focus on or lend our attention to is also making greenways and connectivity to West Davidson. So with the Beatty Park, that's part of that, but we need to be able to be inclusive in being able to ride our bikes along the pathways, just like you have so many options in the east part of Davidson. And I think that connectivity lends itself to community. And so where we can see each other on the greenways and in the parks and sharing and getting to know people. Just right up here, up the hill from my house, we met another new family just out at the park. So those are ways that keeps us as a community town, and with the different greenways and parkways and parks and the walkways, it's bringing connectivity to our community.
Great, marvelous. Great responses by everybody this evening. That kind of closes out the question. Now, a point I'll raise, I've still got another dozen really, really good questions that have come in. So we can go another hour and a half or so.
Sleep.
It's fascinating listening to y'all. It's been great. So the time is out. And with that, we're going to shift to our closing statements, which you all have a minute. And next person up is Mr. Neal. So you get to begin.
There you go. I appreciate the time. I think we had some great dialogue amongst the candidates. And really, I go back to, what's core within Davidson. And, I say smart growth for a sustainable future, but what does that mean for Davidson? It does build and maintain streets that are safe for people walking. It's creating a range of affordable housing. It's diversifying the tax base and corporate retail partners. It's exploring and providing transportation options and protect open spaces, extending the greenways. Also, I said before, we need to foster a community that feels like there's a sense of place here, that everyone's involved. We bring people in that are key stakeholders and collaborate. When we have a board that's like-minded, we tend to maybe get into a rut of groupthink, and we need to have a balanced board that we can improve creativity, we can improve diversity of thought. And I will say one thing is there's a book called One Town, Many Voices. And if you haven't read it, it's part of Davidson. And it's by Jan Blanchett and Ralph Levington. And that book really talks about the town and the many voices that built this town. And as commissioner, I want to be part of those many voices, so I can continue to contribute to the town I absolutely love, Davidson.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ryan.
Good evening. I appreciate being here. I think it's been a great dialogue, not only tonight, but the last 3 forums that we've had. It's been a great opportunity for me to hear from the other candidates to see what they stand for, as well as to articulate the views that I'd like to bring forward as commissioner. Every election is an important election. And I think this one is no different. I think we as the next board of commissioners will shepherd what the growth plans for the next 10 years at Davidson will look like. You have a choice as voters. It's been declared in the last 10 days. You have a fabulous 5 slate that is out publicly that has promised groupthink confirmation bias and to act intentionally. And they're going to do it together. And you have a choice of whether you want to vote for that and have 5-0 votes or maybe an occasional 4-1 vote for the next 2 years. Or we can, as a town, bring forward diverse thought, diverse ideas, and look for different ideas to bring forward for the town as we move forward. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I've got a very, very specific set of plans that I put forward on my website and Facebook page. If you want to see any of the details, it's all there. I encourage you to take a look at that, as well as ask the other candidates what their positions are on these issues. I look forward to the discussion next week, and I thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you. Mr. Boyd.
Yes, thank you all for hosting this and for organizing this. It's been a good evening. I always felt a sense of a vocation of service, even in my professional experiences, both domestically and internationally. And I've worked with people around the world. And I've always felt like service was something we're all called to do, especially in a smaller community like this. So I'm running because I feel that sense of service. I love people. I love helping. I love getting stuff done. And I will be a practical, apolitical, moderate member of the board who just wants to serve this town.
All right, thank you. Ms. Campbell.
I echo the thanks to the chamber for hosting this event. Always one that you look forward to. And while we do have a couple more on the schedule, it's a good balance to have our opportunities to present ideas and take questions from the voters. What I've learned in my 4 years as a commissioner is that to move anything forward requires consensus. No one person drives an individual agenda on our town board, but one person can build consensus and work around that. I'm not looking for 5-0 votes, but you're looking for the input across our community to do what's best for our community. So now more than ever, we need leadership, we need experience, we need to bring that together to move forward for our town. And I hope folks will get out and vote. We've got early voting at the Davidson Branch Library that starts on the 21st and election day on November 2nd. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. All right, Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah, again, my sincere thanks to everyone that was involved with this forum tonight. I thought it's been excellent. And I want to also thank all the fellow candidates. I think everyone's done a great job preparing, listening and to each other. And I also want to thank everyone at home who's listening and is interested and loves our town. It's a town that's exceptional. It's because of the selfless devotion of our citizens and the time and energy that we all put into our town. I've learned a ton in the past 5 years serving the town. I'm grateful for my experience. It's really built my perspective. It's given me opportunities to engage with a variety of folks in town, and it's taught me what I didn't know before having that experience. And it taught me to not assume simply because something says something or you believe they are grouped together that they automatically agree with each other. And I think you can watch 5 years worth of planning board experience to understand where I do and do not agree with people. I'm pretty good at respectfully questioning folks, and I'm pretty disciplined in approaching local government. I would love the opportunity to continue to do that for this town, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Fay, you're next, please.
I started off the forum thanking the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, and I'll do that again, but I really also want to thank the people that are watching right now. Being engaged in a local election, following it, voting is going to be critically important this year. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to get involved in a community election. As I said before, this is not my first time running. I've been involved in the town for a long time and have enjoyed my experiences with the town. And I just want to continue that by serving Davidson as the best that I can. I think we have a beautiful town that I have been, since the moment I stepped foot into Davidson as a resident, I have felt welcomed, and I've really immersed myself in the culture and the college and everything else. And to think that there's a group that has a group thinking is beyond ludicrous, and quite honestly, it's offensive. I cannot tell you how different every single person, all 8 of us, are completely different. And because one resident decided to name a Fab Five doesn't mean that we have a group thought. That's one resident's opinion, and we respect it as a resident. But to insinuate anything otherwise is quite honestly is disingenuous, and I'm not going to accept that.
All right, next is Mrs. Brandon.
Yes, I believe that it's important to us to remember that whom you vote for to be a part of that 5 is important, that there's reflect good stewardship and collaboration, even in the midst of diversity, in the midst of not agreeing. But the ability to work with others is very important to the progress of this town. There's been there's I think the accountability factor of a town commissioner lends itself to serving the best interest of the common good. And so with that, I would solicit your vote for me because I'm one who puts forth integrity, conscientious of community needs, and I have the ability to collaborate with various entities and various levels, no matter what the thinking is, and that I have an open mind to do so. So I'm good, strong leadership and look forward to serving, the potential of serving as a town commissioner. And I want to thank everyone for joining us and for putting this on. This was a really good forum and really good ideas, and I appreciate you.
All right. So Mrs. Michael, you have the last word of the evening from all the candidates. So the floor is yours.
Oh, bless. I feel I feel the pressure now. Thank you guys for putting this on, the Lake Norman Chamber for putting this on, and for the opportunity to share our thoughts and ideas and visions and passion around what we love about the town and how we would like to work the policies to continue to see that through. I think as one of the 2 incumbents here that we have done good work, and I think there's still much more work to do. I think actually the incumbency is important for that continuity in leadership as we welcome other new candidates to the board. So I would hope that voters would think about that in terms of incumbency. I think that it's important on a regulatory body, a board like this, as Jane mentioned, to have that sense of collegiality and not groupthink by any means, but the assumption that people are all working in the best interests of the town and what they see as the best interests of the town, and our ability to build bridges amongst each other and to negotiate and to compromise and to win or lose to move on to the next vote. And so I think that sort of temperament is really important for representation of the town. There are lots of individual projects that I'm excited about. If I have the opportunity to see through our 251 South, the potential Linden Mill. We didn't talk about police and fire, but our potential co-responding mental health unit there that I think are all really important. And it would be a privilege to get your vote for this coming year. Thank you.
All right, everyone. I guess, first of all, I'm very biased because I have to tell you, I love this format. I love the fact that we can be divergent across ideology and thoughts and have a very respectful discourse and conversation. I have to tell you, the residents of Davidson are excruciatingly lucky to have each and every one of you running. They are going to have a tremendously difficult decision to figure out which of the 5 of you to seat. I hope, regardless of the others, that you stay engaged, whether it be a planning board, a park board, you all bring something very valuable to the table and to the community. With that, let me say, which is one of my favorite sayings, there's no more important vote, there's no other election that you have more influence on the outcome as a voter than your local election. Over the past several years, I know for a fact where we had one race where one person lost by 2 votes. I know another race where we were flipping from 2- and 4-year terms, and the decision was who got more votes, and literally had a tie vote between 2 commissioners, and they had to flip a coin to determine who was going to get 4 years versus 2 years. So to everyone listening and following along, I hope you enjoyed this evening. And more importantly than anything else, it is imperative that you get out and cast your vote. It is truly one of the greatest rights that we have as citizens in the United States of America, is to vote for the people of your choice. Again, I am thoroughly impressed with each and every one of you tonight. I want to thank you for giving of your time, and hopefully you can encourage others to click onto this on social media and other sources and get a chance to listen to all of you and the great job you did tonight. So with that, I want to thank you and good night.
Good night, everyone.